Hi guys, we're here, me and Emma again, as always, talking through the transfer window, and let's just sort of kick it off. Emma, you've all been waiting for the articles, and then I think you've had two this week, haven't you, transfer news?
Yeah, I wish I'd put out the Stanway one earlier. I was sitting on it for weeks, but hoping that no one got it. But we wanted to make sure that it had a decent run out, so we left it until the Monday, and we got it out just in time, I think, before all of the news started dropping from elsewhere. But it's set to be a busy one this summer. So
that's your exclusive. That one, definitely the Stanway, got it out there just before they did. So. I think once you dropped it, then they dropped it. It's like a domino effect. I think we've seen that a bit, haven't we, with women's game? We're seeing. Well, I think I'm seeing from when you first started to do articles. There is definitely now more people are doing them. Obviously, Sky Sports are involved. They're going to do it bigger. How is it as a journalist transfer season?
I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I genuinely hate it. And I think people think I joke, but it's by far I would quite happily pass it on to someone else. I genuinely can't stand it. So, but no, look, I personally don't like it, but I think it's great for the game, and that's why I do it, because it's part of, I report on women's football the same way I report on men's football. So it happens in men's football. You talk about players, where they might go, you sort of debate about what clubs might be best for them. That's part and parcel of the game, is, the fun of it, really. So
yeah, definitely the fun of it.
You talk about it in men's football, then why not talk about it in women's football? So it just no one did it. So that was why I was like, I don't really understand why people aren't doing it. So I sort of, I guess took on the mental a little bit, and now I can't really step off it.
Yeah, you're the flag bearer. You started it, and now you're seeing the big, everyone's doing it.
Yeah,
it's getting bigger. Just to say hi to a few people. Hi, Vix, Eldon, John, who's in. I know Karen's in. Ellie. Listen, guys, as well, if you're watching on Twitter, come over, drop a like on the video. Let's get it going. Let's get it banging. It's going to be a good one. Let's start with the first one that came out the Monday. And I want to start. Well, where do you want to start on that one, Emma? There's one player I want to start on. So if you're happy for me to go on it. Yeah. Nikita Parris, Man United. Obviously, you said Spurs as well. But what? Man United were interested in Paris last summer, weren't they? And then she chose to go to Arsenal, £100,000. Waste of money, in my opinion. But that's by the by. Obviously, they want to now ship her off. She's not done that well. I think she's had one goal all season. We'll get onto that. Don't worry. Hiya, John, as well. Why are Man United now going back for her, or interested, or where do you see that at?
I mean, personally, I don't think she will leave Arsenal. I think it's more, she's obviously not getting as much game time. Her form hasn't been quite the same since she moved back to the WSL. So I think naturally, when you have a player, when you have a player who might be on the peripheral and clearly, not quite happy, then other clubs will sniff around and see what the situation is. There has been incidences in the past in women's football where there's been kind of mutual terminations of club contracts. So, if it's not beneficial to anyone, then there are cases where you might not necessarily have to pay a fee. So I think, as far as my understanding is, that United's interest, obviously, like you say, there was a bit of interest before Paris went to Arsenal. And then naturally, I think United have just sort of, picked up the phone, seen what the situation is. And I don't think they were overly willing to spend money. That situation could change depending on, whether they get their targets. I think what would be considered their main targets in the summer transfer window. I don't think Paris is one of them. And I think it's the same with Tottenham, really. It was more an inquiry as opposed to anything. But
right, okay.
I think with those situations, it's always one to keep an eye on, because, like I say, it can be a bit of a domino depending on, if fees are lowered, if contract agreements can be made, perhaps pre-agreements, or if they don't get their main targets, it might be one to go back to. But
so would you say this is remember when we talked about what's her name, Natasha Flint? Would you say it's like that kind of situation of just put the feelers out kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, look, you don't ask about a player unless there's something in them that you like about them. Otherwise, what's the point of inquiring? So there's obviously some kind of interest there, but as far as I know, especially in women's football, a lot of people make a lot of calls about a lot of players, and you always have backup options because it's not quite like the men's, where it's very easy to kind of manipulate situations in terms of when players' contracts are over. Women's football, people are always on the move, and the loan system's used a little bit more cagely. So there's always phone conversations happening. But so obviously there's interest, but like I say, I don't think it's anything beyond that at this point. I haven't heard anything about any clubs making in bids, and obviously, like I say, her situation at Arsenal is she is under contract, so you would expect Arsenal to want a fee, and I don't believe United would be in a position where they would be willing to pay a fee.
Talking about bids, this is one, Signe Bruun. For me, I think we know Mark mentioned she had injuries, but it's one that they're looking at. Where I know us fans would like her back. She's great. She's, nice person. And in my opinion, I don't see where they could get better if they're not willing to play big, big, big money. What's the situation with that then?
Yeah, I mean, I think it works both ways. There's still conversations taking place as far as I know. I think it might be something that will probably take place throughout the summer, maybe even after the Euros, and just see how she sort of gets on in terms of her fitness over the Euros. But it works both ways because obviously the player herself, she's not really had much time at Man United. She obviously only joined Lyon in June last summer. So I think for her situation, it's, it's kind of positive all around because, Lyon for her is a great club to go back to. So I think it's just a case of those having those conversations and Man United weighing up kind of the pros and cons, obviously with her unfortunate injury history so far. I think it's a decision that Mark's got to make. And like I say, I think that's one that might actually be impacted by potential other signings if they can, if one or two other players become available in Signe's position that they think might be ready here and now and, might be a little bit more reliable in terms of injuries, then they'll go for that player. But I think it's good that they know that they've got someone who is obviously settled into the squad well in terms of, personality. And Signe obviously seems quite happy at Manchester, in Manchester. But like I say, I think she's also quite open to going back to Lyon. So it's not just a one-way conversation. It's not all the club's decision, is what I'd say. I think it's definitely a two-way conversation that's going on with them. But I think it's all very amicable at the moment. But I think it might be a while before we find out sort of what that situation is.
This is a question from Vicky. Would we have to pay? And I think we would. But just a question that I'm going to adapt. Are Man United willing to pay for players that you're aware of, Emma?
Yeah, I think they're willing to pay for their main targets. I think the problem is, and this is the case with actually a lot of clubs outside of the top three, maybe even, even with Arsenal, I guess, I don't think they would be willing to pay for players that aren't their main targets. But yeah, a lot of clubs in WCL, if they don't hit their number ones, then it's the boards do seem a little bit hesitant to sort of pay. Obviously, Signe, if you wanted to bring her in permanently, then yeah, you would have to pay a fee. There can be conversations, obviously, to be had with Lyon about potentially bringing her in on loan again. That might be another 6-month thing. So as far as I know, that's not been ruled out. The option to bring her in on loan again has not been ruled out. But yeah, obviously the manner of kind of wages and things like that and compensation fees potentially they might come into play. So you have to weigh up all of these options. But yeah, like I say, I think there is a bit of a kitty, but I think that's saved for the top tier, I would say.
Okay, because there's one that apparently we were pushing for in January, maybe before Bruun, that I've heard of. This is Natalie's sources now. And she's out of contract. She was mentioned in your article. We've spoke about it. Caitlin Foord, out of contract. In what I've heard, there's offers on the table from Arsenal, but not just Arsenal, Man United and Juventus. And obviously she's got to make a decision, but your opinion on her, do you feel like she's like you say, one of the top premium targets for Man United, or do you think it's sort of in and around?
Well, I haven't heard, I know she's got a lot of interest from a lot of clubs, and there are a number in the WCL. Man United isn't a club that's been named to me. That's not to say they aren't interested. I would be surprised if they weren't, because I think she fits all of the bill. But I think in terms of Caitlin Foord, I think I would be surprised if she doesn't stay at Arsenal. I mean, obviously she's got lots of options there, but I think, you know, especially with the situation around Miedema, you know, even if she does stay for one more season, I think Caitlin Foord knows that there's perhaps an opportunity there to get more game time. This is a fairly new sort of squad under Jonas Eidevall. They're building towards something. So I think that's the reason why there's been a lot of speculation, is because I think similarly with the situation around Miedema and even Williamson before she signed her latest contract extension, players like Caitlin Foord, I think they're just in that kind of in between where they're probably deciding with the club what the best route forward is. But she's certainly not short of interest. And I do think if she was to decide to leave Arsenal and United were interested in her, I'd be surprised if they didn't go for her. And I would put her in that sort of top tier category. But as I say, I've not heard anything, you know, specifically linking her with United.
I don't want to say specifically what I've heard, but it's not great for United. So the fact that you said there is a kitty, but it's only for the top tier, that makes me then think they're not getting her, or the kitty's not big enough.
But that, like I said, that's a situation with every club in the WCL, you know. And I know that, you know, you as Man United fans, you want to be in that top category with Chelsea and Manchester City. But I think, you know, and this is something that Mark's spoken about to me a lot, and also in press conferences about, he wants to build a model, and the club wants to build a model where, you know, they're not spending so much money straight off that then the club is always kind of in pocket. They want to sustainably build. So I think that there is a kitty, but they're not like that. They'll have a set price, and they won't go over that, I think, is probably the fair way to say it.
Yeah. But when I think about it sustainably, they've been going 4 years now. I think they were saying that back in the Championship. I think there's a certain point where you have to sort of look at the scope of women's football, look how it's growing. And I think there's a point where you have to go for it to make it happen, if you get what I mean. And I think you will get left behind if not. I think we've seen with Everton, they increased their budget. And I think we've heard Mark say a couple of times, we need to increase our budget to be of a top 3 side kind of thing.
No, I mean, like, I totally get that point of view. And I do agree with the opinion of, if you want to grow, then you need to bring in the top players and then, you know, build around that. And in terms of then just add depth. But I think that first season when you were in the Championship, you know, the club put a hell of a lot of money in then. And there was a lot of money put in the first 2 years. Yes, I know there was issues around the facilities, etc. But there was a lot of money in terms of, you know, player budgets that were put in the first 2 years, which obviously came as a huge loss to the club. So naturally, in terms of, you know, when you're looking at the outgoings and the spendings over the 4 years, Man United have probably spent more than most WSL clubs in that 4 years. And that's literally from their infancy. So I think from the club's point of view, they're now at a settled position where actually they've shown in the odd games that they can compete with the top 3. So if they can get consistency by adding 1 or 2 top tier signings with that, you know, kind of budget that they've got, and just building maybe, you know, adding 1 or 2 players over the next couple of windows, I think that's probably what they're looking to do.
And we'll touch on this comment, but I just want to, I suppose, come back to you on something. Spurs, I'd say we're quite away, not away, but we're ahead of them. You know, I think even I spoke to Jamie Spencer, who's on a lot of press conferences, been on this channel before. Yeah. You know, if you look at the gap between, I think it was Jamie or someone, but, you know, us and then Spurs, there is then that gap. So I get it. It is a top 4. It's not just a top 3. It's a top 4. And then Spurs are like now, I suppose, the best of the rest. But they're looking at spending money.
Yeah, and Spurs have had to put a lot of money to just get to be the best of the rest. And I think that's the thing, is that actually United they've jumped the gun. You know, they kind of jumped over the hurdles of those mid-tables because they did that investment so early on. And now all those other clubs are having to invest even more and more to play catch-up just to get near the top four. Whereas you guys, you know, that's the second year running you've consolidated your position as you know, the fourth best team in England. So I know in your eyes you might think, well, we've not progressed. But actually, you know, the top three teams this whole time are building as well. And they're spending more and more. And they're investing more and more. So you're still playing catch up to them. And I think that's the thing to remember, is that actually what you've done is build a bigger gap between fifth and fourth. Yes, you might not have got as close to third as you would have liked, but you built a big enough gap. So there has been progression. There has been progression in terms of on the pitch, and also
I think it's progressed on the pitch this season. Yeah, but I do totally agree with what Mark's saying. You need to increase the budget more, and it's semi-concerning that he's having to come out and say it. That's the problem, I think, with a lot of fans.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's too. I wouldn't look too much into that. You know, it wasn't a case of him. It wasn't a plea. You know, that was in response to questions around sort of how the club was building towards the future and what they were doing. And he was saying, you know, we want it to be sustainable. But look, as I say, the top three teams are spending more each year. So naturally, if you're Man United and you want to close that gap, then you've got to spend a little bit more each year than you probably would have planned, you know, to bridge that gap. But you can't bridge that gap overnight. And these are clubs that have been, you know, spending for years. And I think that's the point, is that it's, you know, yes, you increase your budget, but you can't increase your budget every year to a point that you're not sustainable as a club. You just need to slowly increase it each year. So that means, you know, I don't know, adding 2 or 3% to the budget every year. And that's at the same time as City, Chelsea, for example, increasing theirs by 1 or 2% every year. So you just got to add the extra couple of percentage to try and bridge that gap.
We'll skip that point. We'll skip my views because I think we could have a show just on that. This one, Ona is a massive player, I think, for us. I think for me, when she joined, I think we even had a show about it, you know, Ona and Eva, those kind of players. And I think she joined at the same time as Lucy Bronze and Greenwood. And I said, Ona will be better than both those players. And I think the chickens have come home to roost. My eggs are out and, you know, the chicks are here and everyone's shouting Ona's name. And it's the time, isn't it? We need to lock down, for me. I know a lot of fans will say in here, you know, Vicky's just said it here, retaining Ona, Russo, Jackie. And you also mentioned Katie in that. I'm not going to leave her out. And you mentioned in your article those players, and you mentioned Ona linked to Barca and Chelsea.
Yeah.
And Natalie's sources now have heard that Chelsea have made the biggest bid. And that Sport Box said, we're surely not going to sell to Chelsea. That's a team that you want to catch. Why are you going to make them stronger? Yes, you're getting money, but at the same time, did you trust that money to go back into buying players?
The problem with the owner situation, and obviously this is what I was, you know, trying to get across on Twitter, is that obviously she's got the option to extend. And when I say she's got the option, I mean that's in her contract, but it's the club's prerogative to extend, to exercise that year option. But if the player wants to make a pre-agreement with a club, you know, she wants to pre-agree to sign with Chelsea or pre-agree to sign with Barcelona. I don't know quite the legalities around it. I know there's, in terms of international players, you can have those conversations. Maybe domestically, she has to get permission from Manchester United. But she can certainly, in principle, essentially turn around and say, well, all right, well, if you exercise my year option and I stay for another year, I'm going to be leaving on a free next summer anyway. So if you know she's leaving on a free in a season's time, then why not take the money and invest that in a replacement? And I think this is a situation where, and I'm not saying Man United are going to do that. I think Manchester United have made it very, very clear that, you know, they want to keep her and they want her to stay. But if she turns around and says, well, you know, I want to go at some point, whether that be this summer or next summer, then yeah, I think as a club you'd be silly to not take the money now, knowing that in a season's time you're arguably going to lose your best player for free.
But where I look at it is sell it to Barca then. Even if Barca don't pay as much, and I think Barca know that. They know that they're in the power position. Can you see Manchester United selling their best player to Chelsea?
Personally, I can't. I can't see it. And that's, I don't see why they would. I think that would be stupid. But at the end of the day, if they're, Chelsea come in and offer double the money, I don't know, because that could make a big difference. That could be the difference between Mark getting his first choice replacement or getting his fifth choice. You don't know. I don't think they'll sell to Chelsea. I just can't see it happening. And personally, from the conversations I've had, I think Ona wants to go to Barcelona. That would be her preference. That's not to say she wants to leave Manchester United. I just know that she's spoken with Barcelona before in the past. There's obviously interest there from both parties. But yeah, I think it wouldn't surprise me if the club exercise her option this year, and then it might be more difficult to keep her next season.
Yeah, I just want to touch on this. I suppose, Emma, we've seen it a lot, haven't we now? Rivalries are growing. Emma Hayes has talked about it. Even Casey Stoney says if you go, then this is what will happen. And, you've seen fans there saying it'll feel like a betrayal. And I feel like she does. I'm not, obviously, all players genuinely love their fans, but I just feel like there is a very special relationship with Man United and the fan. And I just feel like she would... do you think things like that come into play, or do you think she just thinks whatever?
No, I do think that is changing now. I think we've seen it with the likes of, the Chelsea players recently that have left. I don't think I've ever kind of seen a situation where all of the confirmed outgoings at the club have been given kind of such a big send-off. And I think that's because, Chelsea were obviously one of the longest standing clubs in terms of, not the history of the women's game, but in terms of probably the professionalism, and they've had a core group together for a while. And I think that's what Man United want to become. So they've got to a position where they've got players that are leaving all at once, and those players have now, they've built something with the fan base, they've built something with the club, the managers, the staff. And I think that's a situation that is probably developing a little bit more across women's football. I think, everyone, I know it'll come up later on, everyone saw the outrage between some of the City players leaving yesterday or being linked to leaving or potentially leaving. And that's because these are players who have obviously had long affinities with the club. The likes of, obviously, Georgia Stanway has gone to Bayern Munich. And then, obviously, Keira Walsh, who's been rumoured to potentially go. Lucia Bronze, who's obviously got a long-standing history with City. So I think these players now are spending longer and longer on professional contracts. And, the way that the women's game's going, there is more rivalry in there now. So I think if Ona did go to Chelsea, I would expect the same kind of, I don't know, not hatred, but the same kind of, disappointment that, perhaps seen towards Lauren James going, who was obviously, an academy product who left Man United and went to Chelsea. So that was obviously a bit different because I think she started out at Chelsea first. So, if Ona was to go, I guess that's even worse. So I do think that comes into play. And that's why I think, I think she'd be more likely to go to Barcelona if she was to leave, because one, from what I've heard, I think she quite likes the idea of playing back at home. But also, I just don't think she'd want to ruin those relationships or those ties, and I don't see what Chelsea can offer that Barcelona can't.
No, 100%. I am going to come on. Sue, I see you. Alessia, I'm going to come on to it. Don't worry. I've got them questions in the back. But this one, Natalie's sources, not Emma's, Natalie's, says Garcia is done. Nothing's ever 100% done. Yeah, okay. 90% done, 80% done. She is going to be a Man United player this summer. Emma.
Yeah, I've said this to you before. Lucia Garcia's name, it's one of those where I think it's been speculated so much. It's hard to actually tell what is kind of the real stuff and what isn't now. As far as I know, she's definitely been linked with some WSL clubs, and there's definitely been conversations with WSL clubs. Obviously, United was one that has come up in speculation, but I haven't heard anything concrete on that. So nothing from me, I'm afraid.
Mm. Just trust Natalie's sources. What do you think? And I just want to talk as well, I suppose, over fans are now coming out and doing things. And you know me, Emma, I do speak to people and I do know things, don't I? So when people say, oh, it's just all fake news, What's your view? It's not all fake news because it's constantly changing, and people hear things from different sources. So what's your view on just people like trying to find out their own news nowadays?
Oh, it's part of the fun, isn't it? Yeah, it's part of the fun, isn't it? And and this is what I mean by I hate the transfer window, because just from my point of view, from a work point of view, it's a nightmare, because you have to get it from 3 or 4 or 5 sources. You've got to nail it down. You've got to make sure it's 100%. If you use the wrong word, Twitter can take it the wrong way or whatever. We all saw it last year when I said that Signe Bruun was likely, I think, what did I say, expected to come to Man United, because at that time she was out of contract, and then Arsenal came in and made a bid for her, and she went there, and I wrote another story saying that Arsenal were favourites, and then people were saying that I'd got it wrong, and I was like, well, that's how the transfer window works. Like, it changes, unless I say they've signed, then they've not signed. So all that talk that comes on social media from fans, some of it will be speculation, some of it will be fans wishing, some of it will be fans interpreting things the wrong way, some of it will be journalists, like myself, probably using a word that was probably a little bit more than the word that they should have used, things like that. So I think there's a lot that goes around in the transfer window, but as I've said from day one, there's a big difference between saying likely, expected, could, to they have signed with this club. There's a big difference. So until it comes out as that, then I would take it for what it is, which is there's interest, and there will be lots of different levels of interest. Like I said, when I'm talking about Nikita Parris, that was that could be different levels of interest, whereas Bayern Munich in Georgia Stanway, for example, was always heavy interest. But yeah, I think you've got to be careful, haven't you, with sort of what goes around. And
I'll say 80%, and I'll stick to my chest. And if she goes and signs somewhere else, I'll take the L. It's fine. But I'm not working at BBC, so it's
No, but like that's what I mean. Like, that's part of the transfer window, and that's absolutely fine. And it's not a case of people being wrong or people being right. It's a transfer window. It changes. Yeah. Yes, like, it's different. If you say a player has signed somewhere and they haven't, then obviously that's incorrect. But there's loads of situations. We've seen it with, there was loads of speculation around Paris Saint-Germain and Caroline Weir at the beginning of the summer. And my sources were very strong, saying, yeah, there's interest, but it's unlikely that's going to happen.
Well, I thought it was Casey she was going to go. That was where I heard the strong interest, that San Diego definitely wanted her. And I'm sure she had interest from everywhere. But we'll get on to City. I don't want to... That's a big one. That's a less part. Sorry, guys. Sorry. This one from Sue. And I think people are getting frustrated by this because Mark has been saying it for a long time. We're still here. Yes, they've all gone on holiday, but then we know from after holiday they're all going to go Euros. We know a lot of them have options. Ona has the option. Jackie has the option. Russo has the option. I saw someone saying before Millie. Natalie sources says Millie Turner will stay at Man United. Natalie strong sources say that. Jackie, only God knows. Ona, like we said, Barcelona. Russo, only God knows. That's what Natalie's sources say when Natalie speaks to people. Only God knows with that one. And then Katie Zelem. Katie Zelem, for me, is one that is... I don't want no one saying, oh, Katie, we're not here to chat about that. We're here to chat about, is she going to sign a new contract? For me, she's a person who's played every minute for Man United. She is the captain. Whether she stays or goes, there's still people saying she should go. I don't know what, Mark... I don't know. Just your thought on the players that we currently have.
Yeah, well, I think I've put this out there that I expect. I've been told that certainly at least one of them, a few weeks ago had basically, agreed to sign a contract extension. It hadn't been signed, but there was an agreement.
Millie.
I think Millie Turner and Katie Zelem will definitely stay. Okay. I don't see why they would move. I've not heard anything to suggest that they would move. Like I say, it's a transfer window, so anything can happen. But I would be very surprised if they were to leave. Russo obviously has still got interest from elsewhere. Obviously, I reported in January that she had interest from San Diego and a couple of other clubs in the NWCL, which is obviously where she's been before. I think that is still the case. There is still interest in her from those clubs, and I think from a couple of clubs in WSL as well. But as far as I know, that'll be those contract discussions will be well underway now. Certainly, as we build up towards the Euros, I think the club are hoping to try and get as many of those sorted before the Euros. But it's one of those where if it's a little bit difficult in terms of agreeing personal deals, somebody like Ona, for example, that might be one that might take a lot longer. If she does want to, if she does end up staying for another year and they exercise that option, they might add clauses in there, or she might sign a new deal. You don't know. She might sign a new deal with United, and there might be a clause in there, like a buyout clause, maybe perhaps if Barcelona do want to then come in. So there's all these little nuances. So I think maybe the same with Jackie. I think Jackie and Ona's might take a little bit of time. I personally think we'll know Russo's situation before the Euros. And I think Katie and Millie's, I think we'll know about them before the Euros as well.
Yeah, I think Katie and Millie, I'm surprised about Katie. It's not been done earlier, because Tooney was just done. One day we were just chilling and Tooney just came out. And what was the difference between Tooney and the rest of them, do you think, Emma?
Oh, it can be various things. It could be, player development. So someone like Tooney, for example, in her stage of her career, I guess it's probably a much easier decision than somebody like, Jackie, who is in a position to go out and probably sign for several European clubs and play Champions League football. Obviously, that's the same situation with Ona. And Ona, I would put in that very high bracket. She can go to any club in the world and win trophies. So their situation naturally is different to someone like Tooney, who at the time of signing was, just sort of breaking into the international setup and things like that. So I think that's obviously plays a part. There's also things like wages. If you're someone like, Ona, who's become arguably, the most important player in the team, or certainly one of, and you might be the 5th, 6th, 7th highest paid player in the team, and you want to become the highest, then obviously those discussions would have to take place as well. But while she might have asked to become the highest paid at the same time that Jackie has, so like you don't know, there's those little situations around things like that. And then obviously the club themselves, and especially like I say with Ona's situation, if that interest from Barcelona is really, really strong and they put in a really, really high bid, then the club themselves might have to take some time to think about their options, and also the domino effect of who they might be able to bring in with that money if they were to take it. So those kind of things obviously delay it. Millie's situation, obviously, I think with her injury will naturally have delayed probably that situation. And yeah, so it's several things really. But I've seen in a couple of comments people saying, "Oh, why are they leaving it too late?" These discussions have taken place since sort of January time. They do happen all year round, and it's a lot of it is actually done from the team behind the coaching staff. But naturally, when you actually think about the players' schedules and how often they play and how often they train, you might be able to fit in a conversation, I don't know, once every few weeks or something. So,
well, Emma, I just want to say, it's not the thing, I mean, like, for example, Russo, the agent, is the brother, he's probably watching right now, hiya, Luca, hiya, hiya, I can't even say Gio, you're okay, the agent is the brother. He comes to every game. There's hash it out, finish it off, do the job. It's Russo for me and Jackie, but never mind Jackie. Russo, Tooney and Russo, that's the song. That's what it's all about. That's what you build your team around for me. Millie as well. And yeah, to Zelem. But Tooney and Russo is who you build it around, and that's what you put all your money on, and that's where you say, Ona, if she wants to be the highest player, yeah, there you go, there's the money. Russo, there you go, there's the money. What? This is all this, but I get what you're saying, build and all this, but it sounds like,
yeah, I completely get what you're saying. Like, if I'm just giving you information as a journalist. If you're asking me as a fan, I want contracts sorted way before the transfer window opens. I would have wanted them out and sorted by now. Spurs got theirs done early. So I completely agree. I can only relay sort of what the messages are. And I think, I do think the Spurs contract situations, bar maybe one or two, were very, very straightforward. You even look at like Liverpool, for example. Like I think I put it out 2 or 3 weeks ago now that, Liverpool captain Nufa is expected to, sign a new contract. But as far as I know, as of last week, that hadn't yet been signed. It's just, all the little details that just need agreeing. So that happens. And some clubs are better than others, I guess, at getting that sort of thing over the line. But yeah, so I totally get that. Totally get the frustrations, but also at a club like Man United, naturally you're going to have bigger players. So when you've got bigger players, there's going to be a lot more personal terms and little nuances that you've got to decide. And if you're a player like Alessia Russo, for example, who at the moment is your main striker, if Mark is in the transfer window and is looking to bring in another striker that could potentially, take her playing spot, and she might not get as many minutes, naturally that's something that as a player you would consider as well. So I think there's lots of different things, but I totally get your frustration from a fan's point of view. I would have wanted it done by now.
Yeah, I suppose I'm going to touch on the devs because you did mention Maria Edwards, but I just quickly do you know anything about this? I mean, you did mention it as well a while ago, and it was put out thinking even in December. And now we're 5 May. I expect it around now. But what do you know? The director of women's football.
Oh, okay. So I actually asked about this again in, was it March time? Maybe last month, actually, maybe even April. And basically asked why it was taking so long. Didn't get a direct answer. I wasn't very convinced by it. I personally think the whole situation around the men's team has meant that it's taken a back seat, which is why I was asking the question, because I don't think it's acceptable really. So to put it bluntly, I don't think they've taken massive steps there, and I think it's been kind of ignored a little bit.
Yeah, I think it has as well. I've heard good things though, so let's see. But I do think a lot of it has been ignored because they're like you say, the men's team ran this. What's he doing that? Director. They're trying to get another director under John Murtagh first before they even.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that's happened though around the contracts. I think let's talk about City just for a bit. There was Stanway when she moved out. She said she's left because they didn't take her seriously enough. I don't know if you saw that in The Athletic. She said if they had approached her earlier, maybe she would have signed. And I don't want to be in a situation with Russo. If you'd approached me earlier, I would have stayed. But now because Casey was in my ear all the year, I'm going to San Diego because she is obviously more interested. What do you think?
I personally haven't heard that about Stanway, so I can't comment on that. But look, I know that there was conversations with a couple of players at Tottenham, for example, from not necessarily conversations, but certainly interest from other clubs, and the club nailed those important players down early and made sure that they got them in early. I do think that does make a difference when you know that your club is proactive and knows that there's going to be interest around, and you nail it down quickly. I personally do think it makes a difference. But as I say, I think naturally at the bigger clubs, so your likes of Arsenal, Man United, etc., because there is a lot more nuances around. Man United are one of the few clubs that have kind of options. Certainly were one of the few clubs. There's more and more now. But they've the way that they sort of deal with the women's contracts is very similar to the men's, and therefore there's a lot of added detail in there that a lot of clubs don't have in women's football. So there's simple things like holiday pay and things might be a bit more. I don't know, medical cover. Look at
when Shivy got pregnant, no one had that, and then she
exactly.
got maternity leave, and it's just a rule that's been brought in for next year in the WSL. So people are saying, I've seen people saying positive news. United are doing it right, and I feel like they're doing it right because they came in and the time and they've done it. They're mirroring a lot of things, But mirroring the men, look at the state of it. It's not always the best way, you know.
Yeah, no, and it isn't always the best way, and that's what I mean. You know, I still think that United have got a way to go in terms of kind of appointments and contracts. And just sort of going back on the director of football thing, I do know that conversations have taken place and they have been looking at people. But like I said, I think it's just taken too long. So I think those situations, you know, at clubs like and Arsenal, I think are the same. They probably can be sorted a bit earlier, but like I say, I think it's because they try and do things properly in the contract. So it's a catch-22 really. But as from a fan point of view, I'd be pulling my hair out. So I completely understand it.
Positive news. Everyone's peppering us now, Emma. The devs, Maria. We saw the lineup. We saw the academy graduates. It was Bex, Maria. Obviously, we know Karna's gone. Poppy Lawson. There's positive news on that. Neve, Chloe Williams, and your girl, Emily Brew. I know that Emily's going because she didn't play, and I heard that potentially she might be going. Poppy Watson as well. We already know she's going America. Emily, the ex-Liverpool one. I heard the similar for her. What do you know about the devs? We saw you talk about Maria and Bundesliga, and then everyone was like, is it loan? Is it permanent? What's going on? Tell the people.
Personally, I would be surprised if Maria is at Man United next season. I think she was probably keen to move away in January. She wants senior football. Obviously, she had that loan spell at Blackburn. She did pretty well there. She's had senior football. I think she's too far down the pecking order for probably her liking at Man United. And obviously, you know, we've seen the likes of Carrie Jones come up and she's done really well in the first team setup. So I think Maria would struggle to break into the Man United first team. Mark has obviously spoken about that jump, and there is such a big jump, especially if you're wanting to invest and bring in, you know, more squad depth, and it's going to be harder for these younger players to break into that first team squad. So I think a lot of them will go out seeking first team football, but certainly Maria, mainly because she has played it before. You know, she's obviously spoken. I know she spoke with certainly some championship clubs were kind of sniffing around her a little bit in January. But I think the difficulty with the January window is that you need someone to come in straight away. If you're shopping in the January window, quite often you want like a first team player that can slot straight in, and obviously she would be a younger development player for someone. So I think this summer is probably more likely for her to still move away. There are a couple of Bundesliga clubs that have shown a bit of interest, but I think she probably will end up domestic.
Just your view, I suppose, because I couldn't believe it when I saw it. Everyone's sort of like, oh, academy, they did this, and now look at them. And I think to myself, well, how many are going to leave City? How many are going to leave Villa? How many are going to leave this one? And I'm thinking, do you know what an academy? I'm thinking these people who are saying we're finished because Karna's left, we're finished because Maz is going to leave. And I love Maz, I love Karna, but they need to play. They're 19, and Neve's 19.
Yeah.
Poppy, I'm hearing May Stett, get that. I mean, I don't know if what you've heard about any of them getting professional, but, it's not like you say, Carrie got that professional. I think she might get a loan this season. Tara got a loan. I mean, just your views on academy and then, players signing, etc. from academies.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Charlotte Healy's done an incredible job with the academy, but I think it's still important for people to remember how early it actually is. And so while these players, and, I've said this before publicly, I think Villa and United have got the best academies in the country. Chelsea's is up there as well. But in terms of, the products and the players that come through, like you look at Villa's first team, and it's absolutely packed full of young players that come through the academy. So, they've sort of set a bit of a benchmark, but I think people forget how big that gap still is because, in terms of professionalism of first team football, in women's football, that only really came in 10 years ago. So, you're now asking academy players that have only really been in professional academy setups for anywhere between, 2 and 5 years across the board to then not only for them to become full-time professionals in an academy setup, but then make that step up into a full-time professional WSL league. Like, the jump is massive. So I think, 95% of these academy players at a club like Man United, which is, in that, like I say, trying to bridge that gap with the top three, most of them are probably going to go elsewhere. And that's not to say they might not sign, like we saw with Carrie, as you say, signed a professional deal and then went out on loan. Now she's been in and back around with the first team, but she's a full Wales international, so she's an experienced young player. So I do think it is different. Someone like Poppy Lawson, I think, would probably be one of those players who I would say is more likely to get a pro contract, but I wouldn't expect to see her, play kind of in the first team or be anywhere near the first team anytime soon.
Yeah, and that's what I don't understand. That I don't think people understand what, and I don't know. Maybe, but then maybe that's on the FA. And I think, if anything, the FA need to do more, like you said, bridging the gap, but even more sort of. I mean, I know Tony. I know you spoke to him, but more to educate people, because I feel like in the men's side, people know that people get released, but then in the women's side, well, Maz scored. She scored great. I love Maz. I'm so happy for her. I'm so happy for Kana. But then it seemed like I was the only one that was happy, and everyone else said we're finished. I don't understand.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I would like to see more on the academy, and to be honest, that's why I've been quite keen to sort of get some stuff out there over the last year or so, because I think it's only, like I say, it's only really, I would say, the last 2 or 3 years where we got, and obviously they were massively affected by COVID as well. But we're now at a point where there is a competitive academy league, well, not just league, an academy program. I know if you've been following the academy stuff, which I know you have, Nat, then Charlotte speaks about this a lot. It's not just the league. They organise games. Obviously, that there's a cup competition, but then they organise sort of a program where they might play against boys, they might play against championship senior women's teams, they might play against all kinds, university teams, etc. So it's not just a league, it's a program, and that's something which is Charlotte has been working on, sort of a 3 or 4 year kind of program plan, pretty much all season, which has kind of come into place. And she's been working with, obviously she's stepped up into the first team and done a lot of work with Mark and his staff around it. So what they're now doing, Man United are kind of leading the way among sort of the likes of Villa and Chelsea in this, in terms of the academy, but they're building a program which matches the identity of what the first team play. So when you come out of the Manchester United Academy, not only have you got the experiences from the program that the first team players have had, but you also have the identity of how to become a Man United first team player. That's not to say everyone will, but that's how the program will develop, and that'll take a lot of time. That won't happen overnight. And I think the problem with promoting that is that a lot of clubs aren't yet in that position, so it's difficult to promote that across the board. So it's down to individual clubs, I think, at this moment in time to promote that. But I know that Tony at the FA is doing a lot of work with clubs, and the likes of Charlotte, that's obviously developing the program. There's some really good people at Villa that are doing the same. So
that's why I want to shout out Man United. I suppose they've let you come in and do something. I know they let other people. Obviously, Catherine was there. She did articles. I know Rich did. Well, I don't know if Rich did an article, but Rich was at the final with Amy. Amy Amy's looking to put things out and stuff like that about players. I know they're looking to, look at Carrie. She's signed from a first team. A lot of, not might not be it's Cardiff, but she signed from a first team to come into an academy to then build her up and then play her like you say. And I feel like that is happening. I've heard good things. The people are looking to sign just for the academy, for the academy. I mean, yes, then that's the only thing that I think then needs to change. We need to play these players, etc., etc. I get it, but I think that's then a longer term process with Tony, with the FA, with this, making sure that other clubs are at their level, because even though we're beating clubs 8-0, we need that competition. We need, we don't want to be, it's great beating Liverpool 8-0, sorry, Emma, but, it's great. I would love to see it when we were, guys that were at that night, you'd love to see it, but it doesn't help anyone. You know,
no, and that's what I mean by
Garner was scoring all these goals. It didn't help.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by building this program, and that's what the FA and the likes of Charlotte are doing, is trying to build that competitiveness. So as you say, you know, it's not just about the league games, it's not just about the cup games where you're playing against other academies that might not be as well developed. You know, you play against first team senior footballers, you play against boys, so that you build those experiences, and even things, you know, like you know, the cup semi-final against Aston Villa. You know, both clubs wanted it to be an evening game. They wanted fans there so that, you know, the players had to play under the lights at a different kickoff time than what they used to. They had to play in front of a crowd. That's not something that all of them are used to. You know, they packed in a week where they played a cup final off the back of international duty. So players had to cope with the demand of, you know, quick fixture turnaround and pressure towards the end of the season. That was all planned. You know, that was something that they wanted in the programme. It wasn't just the FA had gone, oh, you've got to play 3 games in 7 games. You know, Charlotte wanted that for the team because that's what the academy is about. It's about building a programme that gives them the experiences that are ready for first team football. But yeah, United lead the way on that. So
yeah. Well, like you said, I know a couple of ours wanted to go down. Well, you reported about the Chelsea thing. We wanted to go down. We wanted to give a bit of a away atmosphere. Yeah, they would have, if Chelsea had allowed their fans, it would have been more blue fans. They would have had blue flags. It would have been totally different experience playing with, you know, fans of Chelsea, because I think they're quite vocal fans. So yeah, it would have been good, because I wasn't looking to go down, but I do know that they would have had maybe 1 or 2 vocal, but Chelsea would have had a lot more. And it you know, that's the one thing I don't think they've ever had. They have, you know, us fans that do go down, but they never had an away kind of thing where people want them to fail. So it would be good if that could be pushed. But it's Tony. Tony's got to push it to clubs. Clubs have got to understand. But yeah, we've probably got a long way on that.
Yeah, definitely.
I just want to bring you onto this one because Nishad is saying Charlotte's role with the first team. I know she comes up. She works with the first team players, trains, warms them up. But do you know more about it? Sort of what she does, Emma?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think how many days a week she does it. I think it's 1 to 2 days a week. I think it might be 2 days a week she works with the first team. And then obviously she's involved in match days when her academy team aren't there. But she's very much involved in the sort of the coaching. So yeah, the on the grass stuff. She has a lot of conversations with obviously Martin Ho and Mark on, like I say, sort of building that connection between the academy and the first team. So that's one of her main roles. And sort of always building the program so that it's that feeder system, so that there isn't a gap between players who make the jump and just go straight into first team football and you know, that are training with the first team squad. It's almost like Charlotte's that middle person to help with that transition. So that is kind of her main role. But yeah, no, she works with the first team as well in terms of, you know, the actual first team players, and yeah, does a bit of coaching with them. But there isn't really much more to it than kind of what it says on the tin. Like she does a bit of work with the first team, but obviously she looks after the academy, and that's her priority. But yeah, she's very much involved in that kind of coaching stuff. Well,
as she should. She's part of his team. You know, it's important. I think. How can I say? I've heard. You know, we've seen pictures. Fans have seen. You know, Neve training up a lot. Bex has trained up. Chloe Williams. Keira Parris, 16, trained up. I'm sure Alessia's trained up. Alessia Hearn, who got the, you know, player of the match. You know, everyone pretty much has trained up. And I think having Charlotte there as well helps, because it's that voice. You know, I know that Martin was previously her assistant, so that again helps Charlotte, helps the play, helps everyone. It's not just sort of go for it. You know, I think even Carrie coming down and playing those games, and it's just annoying, I suppose, as me, as a fan who maybe knows a bit more, than seeing people just booting off because they think.
I mean, it's weird actually. Just before coming on here, I was transcribing interviews that I did with Charlotte, Poppy Lawson, and Carrie Jones for a piece that will hopefully be out this week on mental health. But keep that between yourselves, people. Even though it's out live.
37 watching, just keep it more. That's later.
It's fine, but yeah, no, and it was all around this kind of it's all about that building the club as one, and I think that's the key there. So all those players that have stepped up, and like you said, there's the link there between Marty and Charlotte and Mark. and obviously the backroom staff as well, the medical staff, the doctors, the physios, the wellbeing coaches, example. So they all cross over in all departments of the club. It isn't just first team, it isn't just academy. Obviously they have their own programs, they have their own schedules. But that's something that since Mark's come in, obviously Casey was really good, had a really strong relationship with Charlotte in the academy as well. But that's something that Mark's, since he's come in, and kind of a lot more in the last 6 months. Now that he's sort of, had his time with the first team, he's been able to kind of bring that in together. So that is very much a long-term focus.
Look at you promoting you, Mark's biggest fan, mate. He's going to say this. He's going to say he watched it and said, "Oh, I saw you praising me." But no, what I will say is, Charlotte, even though the link was strong between her and Casey, I can definitely see it's like grown her capacity. The fact that she's there on the match day with the first team, the fact that I've seen her coaches training the first team and vice versa, and it's definitely more of a thing. And I know he said in his press conference he needs to get down to more games. Listen, I've seen him at 2. He needs to be at all of them, like me. If I can do it, he can do it. So there's no excuse.
But it's not that he doesn't see the games, though. And I think that's the key as well. Don't get me wrong, presence is a big thing. And that's why, he's gone to those games. But at the end of the day, his job's a first team manager. Yes, it's to build a vision for the club. But Charlotte is the expert. So, that's why he's given Charlotte that role. He trusts Charlotte to tell him, which players.
That's what I will say about him. He trusts people more than what I see with other managers. But that, like I said, that's part of his job. It's to delegate, it's to trust the people. And he's got good staff around him. So so just because you don't see Mark at the games doesn't mean that he doesn't know what's going on. He's having constant conversations, and he'll watch video analysis, and like I say, he sees them in training. So. I wouldn't worry about that department at all. No. I just like to see him. I like to shout at him. This one here. Sorry, I've got a rival on here. Liverpool women fan. Hiya, mate. Thanks for coming. Drop a like on the video if you want this answer. What's the latest on this?
So plans have been in place for a while. I think I might have tweeted this a week ago. I'm trying to work on how I can word this because I have to be careful with what I can say. So there was, as far as I'm aware, there was 3 sites that they were looking at. They've narrowed it down to 1. They're in very good discussions around the planning permission. Plans are being drawn up, and I think they're looking towards. I think it was the start of the 2023-24 season to kind of have that fully built and in place, but it hasn't been signed off. It hasn't been officially signed. Those discussions are pretty well on now.
Okay.
About time.
That's the less we'll have of that. This one, it has been interesting for me. It's something that my friend Jamie, I know he pushed. I know because I know that. For us fans, it's important what kind of players he's looking at. I think, Nikita Parris was sort of the opposite of players that Man United fans sort of wanted. I think we've had a lot of players like that, Abby McManus, Jamie Ross. And I know we're at a different stage, but we've had players like that, Nikita Parris type. And so then when he mentioned the Scandinavian market, NWSL, going global, he did get people excited, happy. That's what people want to hear. That's what people have wanted from Man United. I think you'd look at the fan base; it's global anyway. So,
what's
your views on this?
It's still. All I will say is it's extremely early on in the transfer window, and that's not to say that he's just starting now. They've been looking at recruitment for months, but there might be situations where some players or some clubs don't want to deal with things until after the Euros. And then you got someone like, Mark, who we actually asked him this question. We said, would you want to get deals done before the Euros? And he was like, well, preferably. But at the end of the day, if we have to wait for the right person, then we'll wait. So, in terms of some of his targets, he did say, look, he's obviously got a plan and he's got players that he wants to bring in. And some of them he might have to wait for the Scandinavian market, which might open up more in the winter transfer window. So January. So that might be, him having discussions this summer with those players looking ahead to January. And then there's, in terms of this summer, obviously, the likes from the NWCL and other European clubs would be more in his market. And I know that there are players that they have. Look, I haven't got names for you, but I know that there are players in those markets that they have certainly been looking and sort of scouting over the last couple of months. So
I can name one, but I don't know if you know her. She's a winger. She plays for BK Häcken. Joanna Reitinger, JRK. Joanna.
I think you've asked me about this one before, but
yeah, Joanna, and she. I mean, pundits in Sweden say to me she's like the new Lauren Hemp. That's how good she is. They say and the way I look at it as well, she's playing in Häcken, then she'll play in Sweden. If then she tears up the Euros, then all the eyes are on her. So what's in place to stop? If you're saying, he's waiting for the winter market, Stina was one we were sort of talking to, waiting to the winter market. Why not just pay the fee to get her out of a contract, kind of?
Yeah, and that's obviously one of the big decisions, I guess, around Man United at this moment in time. And it's that in between, isn't it, that I was saying before, in terms of, the club wanting to build sustainably and then also wanting to bring in their top targets. So, look, I think if it's a player that they feel that they need this summer and they're in that top tier, as far as I know, I don't think the board would stand in their way. But if it's a player that they don't necessarily need in this summer window and they can afford to take the risk and wait until January, then I think that they will. I don't think they'll be as cutthroat, perhaps, as maybe someone like Arsenal, who might be a little bit more cutthroat with that. So yeah, and that's kind of where it's that balance, isn't it? It's that tricky situation where they're still trying to bridge that gap. But
this one, Emma, splash signings. Jackie was a splash signing, obviously Tobin and Kristen, but I think the situation helped. But if you could even take them two out, you say Russo splash signing last year. Vilda, I suppose, but maybe would have wanted a bit more oomph, Who do you expect a Jackie, a Tobin, or doing, a big bang? We've made a statement. You're scared.
I think Mark certainly wants at least one. And I think I know he wants a centre back and he wants a number 10. And I would be surprised if one of them isn't a big splash signing, especially with Ethan Mannion's injury. And that's just because they're players that need to come in now and they need to be at that level. I think he wants them to be first team players. Whereas elsewhere, he's spoken about wanting depth in midfield, in central midfield areas, and a few other areas. Obviously, if Ona looks like she's going to be on the move at some point, then they might obviously want to bring in a new fullback. But I think, look, last summer was difficult. Obviously, Mark came in late, obviously after taking over from Casey. There was a lot of contracts and players that needed renewals. There was obviously scouting that had been done by Casey in months before, and then Mark almost had to come in and kind of start from scratch. So I think it was difficult last summer because a lot of people's work is actually done beforehand. So it's then very difficult to come in as a new manager who hasn't been around the league for a few years to then try and, plough players away. And at the same time, you've got obviously a club that clearly had some issues at the time. So this summer, I think, will be a lot more smooth for Mark. And now it's down to him. He's obviously got to do his job in terms of scouting and persuading players to come, I guess. But yeah, I would expect at least one big signing to come in this summer because he's had a year now. He's had a year to look at the recruitment and look at what he wants. And if one wasn't to come in this summer, I would be very surprised. And if there wasn't one in January, then I'd be getting very concerned.
Right. Well, you heard it here first, guys. Exclusive, big signings. You know which areas to look at. Centre back. I mean, that's a name. That's an area where we've not really heard much names. So maybe it is the big one. It is the big one coming. I just want to touch on something that you said about Man United. Obviously, it was I wouldn't say cry, but there was rumbles, wasn't there? And now I feel like that I'm not saying that we're steady. Our ship is steady. No, far from it. I think we've discussed the reasons why. But City are now the one. The tables have turned. And I've met up with a few City fans, and they're dreading it. They're dreading it because I think you did that article saying 7, and they were like 7, and they're dreading it. And yeah, you said 7. Oh, several.
Yeah, definitely not said 7.
7.
Although, I mean, come the end of it, there could potentially be around 7, but like not all of them will be first team players.
Yeah.
I personally think a lot of it's actually been blown out of proportion. I think Stanway, for example, end of a contract. Caroline Weir, end of a contract. Both players, obviously Stanway's gone. I expect Weir to be gone. I know she's nearing very, very close to agreeing a deal with Real Madrid, so I expect that to get over the line. I'd be surprised if she stays. Lucy Bronze stuff, I think there's still some work to go there. There's definitely high interest and there's definitely talks taking place. Whether or not she'll go or not, I'm not sure about that yet. I don't think Keira Walsh will go. She's got another year left on a contract. I'd be surprised if she goes this summer. And then Jill Scott expected to go. Obviously, Karen Barsley always expected to retire. So those, I think, actually, you know, when you're looking at it and people are going, it's a mass exodus. You know, the likes of Brighton, they've let sort of 6-7 players go. Everton could be without 9 or 10. So it's not ideal. Obviously, you want to keep your best players. I think, you know, City wouldn't want Lucy Bronze to go. They wouldn't want Keira Walsh to go. But as for the others, you know, I think Caroline Weir, for example, has been very unlucky actually not to have had more game time. But I think she's a player that City might look and think we might be able to improve on. Same with Georgia Stanway. But yeah, I'd be concerned if Keira Walsh and Lucy Bronze both go. But if one of them go, then I guess that's, you know, it's a similar situation with United and Ona. As long as you recruit well, I think it's fine. So I wouldn't be too worried about City.
But what I will say is Walsh. Why should Walsh sort of peak or whatever? Why should she look to go? That's for me. That's where I think they were saying, why have all these players suddenly going? And I think there's a bit of
I've not reported that she's looked to go. I've definitely not reported she's looking to go. I've reported that there's a lot of interest in her, and because she's only got a year left, you know, if there's a club like Barcelona or Lyon, or for example, that come around and say,
Madrid.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, Real Madrid's one of the teams that's been linked to have had interest with her. If they come around and say, you know, you can literally play Champions League football and slot straight in, and be challenging for trophies, then she might have conversations with them, and she might say, okay, well, if you want to pay a fee, I'll leave now, or she might wait. As I say, I'd be surprised. She's got a year left on a contract. I don't think she'll be leaving before that.
The one that as well I want to talk about, sorry, I know I just cut you up, but Bunny Shaw, she's talking about looking to go as well. She's talking, the club said no, but the fact that there's not that kind of City don't want to sell her. That's what I read. It's not a case of Bunny's staying, she's happy. It's a case of we signed her last year, she's not going kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've not heard anything along those lines. I think that's been blown up. I think naturally, I think Shaw would have wanted more game time, which, you know, obviously she hasn't had this season. But as I sort of said, you know, in terms of last season with Russo, obviously Russo didn't get as much game time because she had some injury problems last season. And I'd imagine that, you know, any club that comes in and offers you regular first team football, yeah, you might have a listen, you might have a conversation, but no, I haven't heard anything extensive around, you know, Bunny being unhappy, and yeah, as far as I know, the club definitely want to keep her. Look, any player that's not playing every week isn't going to be fully happy. That's normal. I don't think there's any, you know, serious rooted issues at City. Some people will like the manager, some people won't. Some people will feel that the club isn't probably progressing as much as they would have liked in terms of, you know, they're probably falling behind Chelsea a little bit. But Arsenal. I think, yeah, obviously Arsenal are progressing, but I do think, you know, City has shown off the back end of the season. I actually think they've been the best team in the last 6 months. I think they've been a better team than Chelsea. I think Chelsea have got a better squad. But I think I think City will be fine. But yeah, as I say, my only concern would be if they were to lose, probably Lucy Bronze and Keira Walsh in the next year, that would be quite a worry. But they've got recruitment, they've got players coming in. There's been a couple of names that are out there, but I do know that they are looking at others as well. So I wouldn't be too worried about City if they can get the players that they want over the line. They've got the money to buy them, and they should be fine.
I think the only player that I've heard of that I would rate is the defender was all right, but obviously Katoto, but then that's where it's linked to then Bunny leaving. But for me, I think they should get rid of White now. But that's just for another day. This one, Everton. You said in your article 4 players are going to leave. Gabby's already been linked. Apparently, Sandy's signed for Man City. For me, that's just lying SSC all over. What can you tell us?
Well, I've been told that Sandy could potentially leave for a fee, which Everton would consider quite a considerable fee given her age, and I think she's only got a year left on her contract. I haven't heard that City's the destination, but I have heard that City have agreed a deal with the goalkeeper. I don't believe that is Sandy, but that's not to say it isn't. I believe, I can't really say the other 2 names, but seeing as Gabby George is probably already out there, I do believe she has had interest from other clubs. And I believe that there could be another 2, up to another 2, so up to 4 in total that are in contract who could leave.
I've heard Izzy Christiansen is upset.
I wouldn't say upset. I'd say I think Izzy and probably Kenza Dali are 2 of the probably other senior players who in contract who've had interest from elsewhere. So
please tell me it's not Man United. Please tell me.
I haven't heard Man United being linked with those players, but I do think there's a couple of clubs sniffing around. There's a couple of players who maybe got a year left, and there's a lot that are out of contract. So Everton are going to have a lot of stop putting me on the spot now.
What's going on though with Everton? That's another one though. Everton. I'm not saying you said it, but your friends in the media. I'll even call her out, Karen Carney. I think even. Don't know if Rachel Brown said it, or Rachel Brown's Evertonian anyway, so you can let that off. But Karen Carney came out, Everton, dark horses, this is what they're going to do. And it's all they did is sort of put their budget, because I know I've heard Willie Kirk say they increased their budget to maybe 100k less than United or something. So they've got that budget. They went out, they dropped 100k on Benison. I think she's still a great player. I think they've got the right manager. I know Mia would come on if I didn't say this, but for me, I think a lot of those Swedish girls underperform, but I still think Anna Advogard is a great player. Apparently Natalie Bjorn is great. Now they've got this guy in, he's probably going to know how to get the best out of those girls. I've also heard that Everton might be looking now at Bruun because he worked with her before. Do you think that Everton are going to be up there next season, or do you think now this is it's going to be a tough season for them next year?
Yeah, look, Everton's the quality that is in Everton's squad. They should not have been anywhere near where they were. They should have been arguably the Tottenham of this season. I think that was the problem, and I still think they will be up there challenging for sort of 5th place next season. They massively underperformed. I think Willie Kirk was sacked too early. I do agree. I think the manager that they brought in now, I think is an exciting appointment on paper. I'm interested to see how he does. And I basically just think that they lost the season because they made a terrible appointment in Jean-Luc Vasseur, and it basically put them back for a whole season. And naturally, when you've been losing games and you're not in the position that you are, then players are going to start underperforming. So that's why I think that there's probably senior players at Everton who feel like they might have lost a year or two because, they reached the FA Cup final in, 2020 against Man City, and that was sort of their progression. Then they pumped in a load of money, and then since then they've kind of had a bit of a standstill, and then they've gone backwards. So it's only a matter of time before that investment pays off. But their biggest problem now is that Brian's got to come in and make sure that he tries and keeps as many of these core players together as possible. and getting the best out of the players that they've invested in, because they've spent a lot of money in recruitment, and I don't think they've got too much more now to probably spend this year because they've thrown a lot of it away. But as you said before, some of the names that they brought in, I think, are really, really good. So I think they'll be right up there, but he's got a lot of work to do this summer, and a lot of that will be around contract renewals as opposed to recruiting players to come in, because I think they've got a squad there that's good enough to challenge for fifth spot, and almost finishing the best of the rest. And I think they just need to take the hit that they're not going to be near the top three next season. I don't think, and then look to recruit properly next summer. But this year, I think it just needs to be about steadying the ship and making sure that they keep the core group of players.
Oh, I didn't realise what it was 100k, but there you go, 200k. I don't think she's a good player, but I think this is the time now. This is the time now for Man United. Look at Benison. She's a class player. I think she's probably got 1 year, maybe 1 year and a half left. Grab her up now. I think, look at City. I know Emma's saying, oh, no, it's not as bad as it's making out. But remember, it's Emma's friends in the media that are writing Exodus. No fans are, yeah? I saw that Telegraph. It said City Exodus. So I think this is the time for Man United to take advantage.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely the time. Like, I'm not saying it's not. Look, it's not ideal. You want to keep your core players. But out of the ones that potentially leaving City or that have already left City, personally, I think it's only really Keira Walsh and Lucy Bronze that City, from my understanding, would be keen to keep. Georgia obviously was coming towards the end of her contract, and I think City would have been quite happy for her to stay. But also, I think they think that they can bring in depth in that position, and I don't think they're too worried. And in terms of Caroline Weir as well, I think she was a player that probably wasn't playing as much under Gareth anyway. So obviously Keira Walsh, you don't want her to go, but naturally, she's one of the best midfielders in the league. There's obviously going to be interest around her. That's normal. And with only a year left on her contract, that's very, very normal. So it's up to City to do well next season and to be challenging for trophies again, to keep players like Keira Walsh and Lucy Bronze. But the rest, that's normal. It's normal. It's players coming towards the end of the contract. So look, as Man United, definitely try and take advantage of this window where you've got a couple of their key players that could be out of contract. If you can recruit this season and push on and get Champions League next season, then obviously the likes of Keira Walsh, if she's not playing Champions League next season, then that conversation between Manchester City and Keira Walsh of trying to extend her contract will be much harder. So there's obviously an opportunity there for you guys to take advantage, but I certainly wouldn't call it an exodus, put it that way.
Friends in the media. No, but I mean, what do you see then, Emma? It's going to be a busy one. Do you see it being a good one for Man United? Who do you see it having the best window? And just, I suppose, what do you predict? If you had to say anything, do you think Man United will finish top 3 next year?
Oh, that's hard. I have no idea until I know how the transfer window goes, like, if I'm being honest. And I'm not ducking out of that. I just think it does make a massive difference, because I think United are almost there. But do
you think they'll make the signings to potentially get there?
I think they've got the capability to. So I don't think there's enough holding Mark back. I think if there's one or two players that he wants, I think he's got the capability and he's got the resources to do it. For those one or two players, I think any more than that, I think there might be a bit of pushing and shoving to do, but I think certainly if he wants to bring in one or two, I think he can strengthen this summer.
How many do you think he'll bring in this summer then? Because he name dropped a centre back, a midfielder, a number 10.
Number 10. Yeah, I'd be looking at
that's 5 players.
I'd be looking at least 3 this summer. Anywhere probably between 3 and 5. But I do think that depends on, if, for example, if Ona goes, then obviously, a fullback would be an ultimate priority to bring in the window. So I do think it depends on sort of which players stay and which players go. But I'd be looking at least 3 this summer.
For me, that seems light, but okay. But then do you think that it's the different now that whereas Casey did all her business pretty much in the summer. Now Mark will do it across both windows more.
Yeah, well, that was the impression that I got when we were asking him about the markets. And, you know, it wasn't a case of him saying, you know, we'll wait until January for the Scandinavian players. I think what he was saying was that it wasn't a case of, you know, you look at it window by window. You look at it as, I don't know, 3-4 year plan, and you look at players that you can get. So I don't think in his head he'll go, right, we need 3 or 4 this summer, we need 3 in January. I think what he'll look at is the players, and then he'll look at when he can get those players. So, you know, it might be that 3 come in the summer and 3 come in January, and that's just because of the personnel. Or it might be that 5 come in the summer and only 1 come in January, because it's only 1 from the Scandinavian market that he's got his eye on. So I wouldn't get too bogged down on numbers of players coming in, as long as, you know, there isn't a exodus, because you all love that word, of players going out in the summer, which I don't think there will be. So yeah, I think there's a solid foundation there at United, and I think if he just brings in a couple more, like I say, one big one to kind of take that first team forward, then add to the depth, then I can see United, you know, then looking to maybe add a little bit of quality in January and try and make that final push for the top 3.
Yeah. Interesting. Emma, thank you so much.
No worries.
Is there anything else you want to add, or anything you want to? I mean, I know you name drop your article. Definitely look out for that one. That's going to be a good one. But is there anything that you think, this is what I want to say, or last words?
God, no, I'm getting out there before you ask me another question. So.
Oh, look, someone's even dropped it in. Staying or going. We talked about it. Only God knows.
Yeah, that is the one that I'm probably least confident on, I would say. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Thank you, Emma. Thanks guys. Hit like on it. Appreciate it. See you later.